Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's daily review. This is Fred Razek at CMTrading. Today is November 28th, 2018, and today is Wednesday morning. So looking at the economic events of the day, just one event really coming out, and that's Fed Chairman Powell will be speaking. He's the Federal Reserve Chairman, okay, which means that he calls the shots in the Federal Reserve in the United States. And it's really an important indicator as to which direction the Fed is going to take in terms of the interest rate. So it's really an important event. Traders really key into some of his words to see the direction of the market. So be aware that that's coming out at 7 o'clock South African time. Now, looking at the markets in terms of Forex symbols, the euro retreats versus the US dollar, we'll take a look at that. And in terms of the indices, the Dow Jones continues its rally upside, really taking the lead by NASDAQ stocks, okay? We'll take a look at that as well. And commodities in terms of gold, we sold off and bounced off of our support at 1212. We mentioned this yesterday. And lastly, looking at the stocks, it wasn't the FANG stocks that took us higher. The Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, which have led the market higher to 27,000. It was really the old school kind of stocks, the Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Home Depot, Verizon. So it comes to show you that the markets are still very strong in terms of their base structure in terms of moving forward. But let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading.
This conference will now be recorded.
So yesterday we actually had a nosedive in the Euro USD. We sold off from about 1308-ish level, 1380-ish level down to 1333. Bounced back up to 1380, but never really hit above this 14-day moving average and sold off since then. And once we broke this 1333-ish level, that was it. We're below 113 now, okay, which is a tremendous retracement for the Euro USD, considering we were trading at 125 just less than a half a year ago, okay? So this is really a big move for the Euro USD. Now, looking at the bottom side of this, okay, looking at a daily, okay, we've breached our head and shoulders position that we had mentioned that potentially was going to be there. Well, we've breached it, which means that we could test these lows of 1237 again. So just be aware of that. I mean, this is a tremendous retracement. We're still at somewhat of a support-ish level here, but we look like we're breaching it. Okay, so the real next major support level I would say is 1178 on the downside, which is about 100 pips away. Okay, so just keep aware of that and be, in the game that, if it does break this 1260, 1270-ish level, we could see it close itself off under 1170. Now, GBP USD still dead, but not, selling off much sharper. Okay, really just at its lows of 127.58. But once it breaks this 127.58, I'll imagine that we'll be back to this 123-ish level. So just be aware of that. Now, however, the Aussie dollar is still really relatively strong, okay? It's holding its piece up here at 72.37-ish level. It's below its moving average, but not breaking down further, okay? So either this is going to play catch up or it's just showing us that it's shrunk in and of itself against the US dollar. Now, jumping into gold, as we mentioned, we sold off quite sharply from 1223 down to 1,212. As we mentioned, that's our support level, as I mentioned yesterday. So, if we do breach this 1212, then obviously we could test our 1200-ish level. I don't think that will be the case, as I think gold will be rallying into next year. We'll take a look at that as that, progresses. But ultimately, you could see in the RSI, we're below the 30. So that's a really, a decent place to actually pick it up in anticipation that it's going to rally and the markets are going to sell off in the indices. So that's, that's a certain play that you might want to see how it, first shows itself, if it does hold this 1212 before jumping into it. Now, like I mentioned, the Dow Jones continued its rally yesterday, and we're looking at a daily. Let's look at a 4-hour chart. You can see that we broke above our 24,670-ish resistance level and just took it up. Okay, now the real next resistance level is 24,000. Well, let's call it 25,000, okay, because I always call it 969, but let's call it 25,000. We're about 160 pips away from that. So with that said, just be aware of it. I do expect some sort of volatility today, especially because Fed Chairman Powell will be speaking. So traders are really going to key into his words for some direction in the markets. Now, like I said, most of the old school type of stocks is what's really carrying the market. However, if we look at the NASDAQ by itself carried itself, okay, which represents some of the big tech, high tech kind of companies in the United States, the Microsofts, the big type of companies like Google are listed on the NASDAQ, and it rallied, okay? Now, it is at resistance level here, previous support level, so just be aware of that at 67.51. If we do sell off, it's quite natural. Now, if we look to the, stocks that we've been following until now, Apple's got some problems with Donald Trump. As it turns out, he wants to add some tariffs onto their products coming to the United States. So, it's been beaten up quite significantly, but it's not bouncing. Okay, so until this resolves itself, it's going to be beaten up here. Okay, and hanging around this 173-ish level. Now, looking at Facebook, same story. Like we bounce off of our low of 128. But at 136, that's it. It exhausted its move. So I'd like to see some continuation to this. Let's see if we do actually get that. Now, Amazon, also same story. It bounced off of the lows, rallied a little bit, which we could call this a almost, potentially a dead cat bounce, because if it sells off, this little rally was just short covering. Okay, so just be aware of that the markets are still, on the FANG stocks are still kind of soft. Okay, the overall market is doing okay, but these stocks are still kind of soft. So just be aware of that. This is Fred Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.